Let's bring in my colleague Sharri Markson now. Sharri, it's been a big week. You were here for the budget. That's really set what the government hopes is a firm foundation for re-election. As you've been monitoring both the pitch by the Prime Minister and opposition leader, what's your overall take on how the campaign has kicked off?
Well, we know this is a cost of living campaign, Kieran. And so we heard really for the first time that message from Albanese. This is how he's going to counter it. He's going to claim that people would have been $7,000 worse off under Peter Dutton if Dutton had been leader. So this is how the Prime Minister is going to try and counter this message, which is so damaging. All Dutton has to do is go around the country and say to people, you know, the Prime Minister promised at the last election that you'd be $275 back in your pocket on power bills, that you'd be better off. But as we heard from Peter Dutton in his budget reply speech last night, everything has gone up, from electricity bills to groceries to rents to petrol prices. So this is going to be where the battlefield is. My concern for the coalition is that clearly, and we saw that from Albanese's press conference this morning, his lines are much sharper. He waved the Medicare car. This is going to be another scare campaign. A lot of voters don't tune into the news like we do, like Sky News viewers do. So will that message come through? Are people going to believe that Peter Dutton wants to cut Medicare? Are they going to believe that he has this dark vision for Australia, that is overly negative? That's what the Prime Minister claimed this morning. Obviously, this is a scare campaign. Obviously, it's false. And we did hear from Peter Dutton last night much more of a vision for the future for our country than we've heard from Albanese. I mean, the Prime Minister has comprehensively failed to outline any agenda for his second term in Parliament. All we've heard from him is temporary cost of living measures to try and win the election. What does he want to do with Australia? And the reality is Albanese doesn't have those answers. He doesn't have that vision because he didn't ever really think that he was going to be the Prime Minister. He was an accidental Prime Minister, if you like. So he probably hasn't thought long and hard about the future of our nation. He's not across the policy detail from any of his cabinet ministers. It's up to each of them to run their own portfolios. So But ultimately, he is better at retail politics. The Labor frontbench are better political performers. Dutton's strong, but then you look at his frontbench, can they sell the message that Labor has driven down the cost of living? And this is where the battle will come down to, because it's so close. Either side can win, and the next 5 weeks are critical in trying to drive home their individual messages.
Certainly is going to be a critical campaign, Sharri. And one of the things, the backdrop, which I find quite hard to predict as well, but I'm very interested to see what you think as well about the overall sort of presence of Trump in the campaign, because we don't know. I mean, obviously, we don't know where he's going to go in terms of foreign policy, AUKUS, the alliance, tariffs, whatever else, but it is an unknown. How do you see this as being a potential risk for both sides?
It's really interesting because the uncertainty that Trump has brought in terms of the trade tariffs, in terms of his unorthodox position on Russia and Ukraine, that has so far played into Albanese's favour. We never expected that, but it has. You know, this uncertainty makes voters want to stick with incumbency, with what they know. And yet it is highly damaging for Albanese. This is a story I first reported, that he couldn't get Trump on the phone. He can't get a phone call with Trump on the trade tariffs. This is so embarrassing. Australia is meant to be one of America's closest allies, and yet our Prime Minister can't get the President of the United States to even speak to him about the trade tariffs, an exemption that both Malcolm Turnbull and Scott Morrison were able to achieve. Now Albanese can't, and you don't get more different political figures in terms of values, approach, ideology than Donald Trump and Anthony Albanese. So Peter Dutton does need to prosecute the case, and we heard that Albanese got questions about this from the press gallery this morning on whether he can effectively manage the Australia-US alliance. Of course, Australians believe, and it is true, that Dutton would handle that more effectively. Dutton has said he even believes that he'd be able to get the exemption on the trade tariffs that are already in place. So, you know, it's unknown how this factor is going to continue to play out. But at the moment, the uncertainty, the volatility has worked in Albanese's favour.
So much, Sharri, comes down to the seat-by-seat battle. How do you see that playing out? Obviously, Victoria, very much the weak spot as a state for Labor.
Definitely, and the Coalition have their eye on between 6 and 9 seats in Victoria. I mean, that would be a lot. This has traditionally been the Coalition's weakest state, a progressive state. If they can pick up 6 states, well, you know, they're almost halfway there. They'd only need another, say, 4 or 5 from New South Wales, 1 or 2 from WA, maybe 1 from Adelaide, 1 from Queensland, 1 from Tasmania, and then they're in a position where they're coming close to majority government. So again, Victoria has been such a bad state for Labor, and there's different issues playing out in Victoria. It's not just the cost of living, but it's crime, it's the crime wave, it's national security, it's personal safety. There've been this string of home invasions in Melbourne, and that is a major issue for a lot of the seats that could swing back to the Coalition's favour, seats that not necessarily are even Labor seats, but Kooyong and Goldstein. I think there's a good chance the Coalition pick those up. Of course, the Coalition then could lose other seats to the Teals, particularly Bradfield. That's one that's high risk. So, yeah, Victoria is a very strong state, unusually. I mean, you think how unpopular Scott Morrison was in Victoria, so unpopular, in fact, the Josh Frydenberg lost Kooyong despite his personal popularity. So definitely it comes down to the individual seats, and that's why there actually is quite a credible path for Peter Dutton to win office. The polls might not necessarily capture the perspective of voters in the outer metropolitan areas, not necessarily either in those Teal seats that the Coalition could win back as well. So, you know, Albanese has a lot of work to do in Victoria, trying to separate the state issues, if you like, from his own record.
Indeed, Sharri, great to chat. Thanks for being part of our coverage as we kick off election 2025. We'll talk to you soon, Sharri.